The problem with doing what you love is just because you love it doesn't mean you're any good at it. Just because you love it doesn't mean that there's a market for it. Just because you love it doesn't mean anybody else is going to love how you do it if you don't do it well. You've got to be good at what you do and provide value in every situation. We need to focus more on hard work and excellence. I did Donnie Deutsch's show, The Big Idea, years ago, and they always had this segment at the end called the Millionaire Minute, where they would bring on this guy and he would comment about the theme of the show. And wouldn't you know, the day I got there and was doing the Millionaire Minute, the theme of the show was passion. He said, Larry, tell me how you feel about passion. And I said, Donnie, I think it's a total load of crap. And you could see all the color run out of Donnie's face underneath that orange makeup. But I sort of gave him that little speech about people who are passionately incompetent. I said, here's the things to focus on: hard work and excellence. The problem is there are people who focus too much on hard work. Now, I'm a big believer in hard work, but there are a lot of people who work really hard at what they do, but they're not any good at it, so it doesn't matter. And then you've got the buzzword of really the 90s, In Search of Excellence with Tom Peters, and everybody was focused on excellence. We got a lot of people out there still making a living talking about being excellent. Here's the problem with that. I know people who are excellent at what they do. They don't work hard enough at it for it to matter. So it's the combination of the balance of both hard work and excellence that adds value to the exchange.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Awesome Wholesaler Experience Podcast, where we look into the many facets of the job, the career, and the lifestyle of insurance and investment wholesaling. I'm your host, the creator of the Awesome Wholesaler Experience, and yours truly, Awesome Mike. Hey, everyone, I have a real treat for you today. This is going to be, I believe, one of my most colorful episodes, and I'm actually a little bit nervous about it. So our guest is a real superstar here. I know you've all heard of him, but let me kind of pay tribute and read off his bio for you so you can know him officially. Today's guest is none other than the famous Mr. Larry Winget. Now, he is the trademarked Pitbull of personal development and the world's only irritational speaker. Now, he has won many awards, and he actually is a 6-time New York Times, Wall Street Journal bestselling author. He's a public professional speaker. In fact, he's actually been inducted in 2002 into the NSA Hall of Fame. So he's one of those guys, one of the true legends in the business. Television personality, and his famous books include one on personal development, which is called "Shut Up, Stop Whining, and Get a Life." Another one on financial services, which is called "You're Broke Because You Want to Be." Another one on management. It's called "Work for a Reason." Your kids are your own fault. That's his parenting book. People are idiots, and I can prove it, and as well as Get a Pair. You can also check out his newest book, which I can't wait to add it to my personal library. It's called What's Wrong with Damn Near Everything. You guys all know Larry. He's been on A&E's Big Spender TV show. He's been featured on CNBC's The Millionaire Inside, Crowd Rules, many television commercials. He's been on Dr. Phil. He's quoted on Fox News, Fox Business, other programs, and now he's reached the summit by being on the Awesome Wholesaler Experience Podcast. Hey, Larry, appreciate you coming on. How are you today, sir?
I'm always good. It's good to be Larry Winget. After that introduction, I can't wait to hear what I have to say.
I love it. I love it so much. Now, I have a quick question for you, though. You say you like your jeans cowboy scratched. Well, I'm from Detroit. What does that even mean?
Cowboy starched, not cowboy scratched.
Starched, that's different.
That means they're stiff as cardboard. You have to take a screwdriver to run down the legs to separate the starch. They're so hard.
Well, that's definitely part of your persona, is your called flamboyant lifestyle as well as wardrobe. Appreciate that. Has that always been that way? Did you grow up that way, or is that?
I grew up in Muskogee, Oklahoma, so I've been into the style for a long time. But when I started in this industry, I was pretty much your standard nerdy motivational speaker. You know, I wore glasses back then and suits and all that stuff. And I grew up dirt poor. And I was with my grandmother one time back in the early days of television, and we were watching TV, and I watched Porter Wagner. Do you remember Porter Wagner, country star? Wore the big suits with all the rhinestones and all that stuff. And I said, you know, I bet that's how rich people dress. If I ever get to be rich, I'm going to dress like that too. And then many, many years into this business, and I've done a lot of stuff, I looked around and said, you know, I guess I am rich. I get to dress the way I want to. And it sort of was matching the outside of who I am, not giving a damn what anybody thinks, with the inside of who I am and what I say from the stage. So it sort of fit the persona. And then I had the A&E television show, and they ate that up, the fact that I looked like I did and had the big earrings and all the other things that went along with it, with the shirts and the boots and all that. So it worked out well for me.
Now, that's actually very cool. And is it a problem now? Like, do you know what you would look like without the facial hair? Or is that a permanent scar that you have to wear for the rest of your life now?
I've had a beard now for 40 years. I have no idea what my chin looks like and don't even remember. I see pictures every once in a while, and believe me, it doesn't look like me because it's been there for a while.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Now, a lot of the audience are sales professionals, and they tend to blend together. In fact, I take a risk, Larry, believe it or not, with this little bit of a sad excuse of a junior high school goatee and a red tie. Do you recommend that they find their own kind of style, or should they pay their dues until they can basically not care what people think about how they look?
I remember working for AT&T many, many years ago, and my boss came to me and said, "You're going to have to shave your beard." And I said, "You care more about what's on my face than what comes out of my face." And it seems to me like that's not quite right. But I earned the right to look like I look. I earned the right to say what I say and be Larry Winget on stage and on TV and in my books and so forth. I did pay my dues. Here's the problem. I think the smartest thing I ever said is discover your uniqueness and learn to exploit it in the service of others, and then you're guaranteed success, happiness, and prosperity. People will pay a premium for uniqueness, but they won't buy different. There are people out there who say you got to be different. Well, I'm not going to risk any of my money on something or someone who's truly different, because that's a risk. Different carries a risk. Unique carries a premium. And so that's what I think we have to decide. And besides that, you don't want to be known as the guy who dresses funny. Now, because here's the problem with that. I do dress funny. I have always dressed funny. But that means I got to be better. The weirder you are, the better you got to be. That's where I can never get any weirder than the way I am right now, because I just don't have it in me to be any better than what I am right now. So that's the risk that you run. So I think everybody should focus on uniqueness, and that should not be how you dress, because that just makes you different.
That's well said. No, a lot of our listeners, they do public speaking, whether it's one-to-one across the desk, whether it's one-to-many across the podium. And one of your famous works that I've read recently is Does It Smell in Here? What's the problem with today's public speakers? Can you address that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I believe everybody's a public speaker and that we speak in public. The difference is professional speaker means we get paid for our words. And that's what salespeople do. That's what guys who take a stage do, women who take a stage. If you go on stage of any type, as you just said, even one-on-one, and you're getting paid for the result of your words, it comes, in my opinion, with some standard. Yeah, I do remember the article you're talking about, how it smells in here. We got way too many people. The problem is the language of the internet is hyperbole. You get to say whatever you damn well please about yourself, and it's just real hard to call you a liar. So we got people out there who claim to be the biggest and the best and the most wonderful. I saw a guy the other day that claimed to be the #1 motivational speaker in America, and he had given 3,000 speeches in the last 3 years that he had been doing this. First of all, do the math on that.
Yeah.
How can you do 3,000 speeches in 3 years? You were selling suits at Joseph A. Banks, according to your own resume, 3 years ago. And I asked him all this. I said, have you ever done the math? And I said, by the way, who made you the #1 motivational speaker in America? On that big list, who voted for that list? And where did Zig Ziglar fall on that list? Where did Brian Tracy fall? Where did Tony Robbins fall? I've been doing this 30 years. Did I make the list at all? And of course, he unfriended me and never spoke to me again because somebody called him on his stuff. So we have to be careful with the language that we use and be able to back it up. That's what causes people not to trust people who do what I do for a living. who stand on stages. Why should they trust us? We've lost our credibility with the stupid way we describe ourselves. Also, when you realize that you can take a picture of your foot, Google it and check me out, take a picture of your foot, put it on Amazon, and within an hour have a #1 Amazon bestseller. There's no credibility that comes with the term bestseller anymore if you've never hit a damn list. And the lists are the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Business Week kind of pulls from Wall Street Journal. There's a few regional lists. There's some topical lists. But an Amazon bestseller is not a bestseller of any type except you sold about 10 books in the space of 50 minutes for 1 hour. That's all it takes.
You know, that's a revelation, if you would. In fact, it could be my best-selling book, right? And it's the only one I sold. But so that language is important. You know, one of the other things, and I think it's a pet peeve of yours, are these cliche phrases or cliche values that are out there. Can you address the state of the cliche world that we're living in, and what's the problem?
When you think of all the stupid things people say these days that are just flat out wrong, I do a lot of shows and entrepreneurial shows for people who tell people you got to become an entrepreneur to take back your power and to gain freedom and all that. First of all, the worst thing in the world, the dumbest idea is to become an entrepreneur. If you think you're going to have freedom for being an entrepreneur, there's no freedom when you know you are responsible for making payroll, when you are responsible for being profitable. If you want true freedom, go to work for the government, get a check every other Friday. That's freedom. You don't have to think. You don't have to be particularly smart. You get to go home at the end of the day, no worries, no problems. So go become an entrepreneur and you'll see what life is really about. Plus, so I can attack that whole entrepreneurial thing. And then the dumbest thing that's going on these days is people who say you got to be passionate. Oh my God. That is my hottest word going. It's the dumbest idea in the world to say you're passionate about what you do. First of all, it's defined in the dictionary as a barely controllable emotion. A barely controllable emotion is going to run your business. Does that make any sense to you at all? It doesn't to me. And by the way, if we're going to let emotions run our business, shouldn't one be as good as the other? Why pick passion? Let's just pick rage. Let's let rage run our business. You know, I know people who are passionate, but they are passionately incompetent. You know, it's like finding out you're good at doing something that didn't need to be done at all. I think we ought to set passion aside and focus on value. Besides that, our clients, our customers don't care about what we're passionate about. That's none of their business even. The only thing they care about is the value we bring to the fiduciary exchange that's going on there. Have we been worth their money? Have we been worth their time? If we have, then the value is obviously there. But our passion is our business. We ought to keep it to ourselves.
Yeah, it's well said. In fact, it leads me to my next little vignette on that is, you know, people tell you to find your passion. And then they say this, do what you love. Do what you love, Larry. What is the problem? You mentioned you can't taste love.
Yeah. The problem with doing what you love is just because you love it doesn't mean you're any good at it. Just because you love it doesn't mean that there's a market for it. Just because you love it doesn't mean anybody else is going to love how you do it if you don't do it well. You've got to be good at what you do and provide value in every situation. We need to focus more on hard work and excellence. You know, I did Donnie Deutsch's show, The Big Idea, years ago. And they always had this segment at the end called the Millionaire Minute, where they would bring on this guy and he would comment about the theme of the show. And wouldn't you know, the day I got there and was doing the Millionaire Minute, the theme of the show was passion.
Oh, gosh.
And he said, Larry, tell me how you feel about passion. And I said, Donnie, I think it's a total load of crap. And you could see all the color run out of Donnie's face underneath that orange makeup. But I sort of gave him that little speech about people who are passionately incompetent. I said, here's the things to focus on, hard work and excellence. And the problem is there are people who focus too much on hard work. Now, I'm a big believer in hard work, but there are a lot of people who work really hard at what they do, but they're not any good at it. So it doesn't matter. And then you've got the buzzword of really the 90s, In Search of Excellence with Tom Peters, and everybody was focused on excellence. We got a lot of people out there still making a living talking about being excellent. Here's the problem with that. I know people who are excellent at what they do. They don't work hard enough at it for it to matter. So it's the combination of the balance of both hard work and excellence that adds value to the exchange. The thing I honor the most is the fiduciary agreement. People paid me money. When I honor the payment that has been made to me, I can set all emotion aside and realize that it is my obligation, my moral core says I must step up, regardless of how my emotions play, regardless of whether I'm sick that day or not. Nothing matters except my emotional core values. I mean, my core values, my moral core values say that when somebody has paid me, I have an obligation to be amazing. Because that's what they paid for. They didn't pay for mediocre. They didn't pay for what makes me feel good. They paid for what they were promised, guaranteed, and expect. That's what I deliver on. That's what more people need to think about when they start into business.
You know, I echo that as well. And what I've found is that there's one of two camps usually. One is what you just said. You've been paid, so you want to really,
Yep.
Exceed those expectations and provide a tremendous product. And that's your fiduciary responsibility. The other end, though, the other end of the camp is this minimal viable product, Larry. The guys that say they want to do the least amount of work possible just to get to the finish line and get that money and get on to the next one. It sounds to me like you're in the former. But why do people think that why do people even think that the latter is even realistic? It's an entitlement mentality almost.
Well, because it pays them just enough to get by. And most people are not really focused on I believe at the very end of the day, why do we do what we do? Because we can. I really think that's all it comes down to. You do what you do because you can. You ought to do all that you can do every single day simply because you can. Now, we've reached this place in society where entitlement and all these other things that say, I can do it, I don't have to do it. And that's their focus. I don't have to do it to be okay. And we've settled for okay in there. Whoever got up with a motivating factor in their life that says, I'm shooting for okay. That to me is really sad. Now, the reason it works for them and they get by with it is because right now, especially, we're in an economy, and this applies to regardless of what you do for a living, we're in an economy that is pulling along bad players. And you can still make a living even if you suck at what you do. There are a lot of guys out there painting houses who really do a crappy job and it looks like it's been painted with a broom. But because the economy is good and there's more customers that need their house painted than there are house painters, they can still make an okay living. Same thing with any other business. Now, once that changes, and we've lived through, what goes up must come down. We all know that. That's just how it works. Eventually there will be a recession and it flushes out the people that you and I were just talking about there. Because then it falls back on value, hard work, excellence, honoring that fiduciary commitment you have to your clients. And if you don't have that skill built into you, you don't have the skills, the abilities, the talents to pull that off, then you're going to start to suffer. But when things are good, you're being pulled along.
Yeah, I think when the tide goes out, you definitely can see who's wearing swim trunks and who's just looking at. There's some things that are going to happen when that tide does go out, but while the tide is still in, while things are still good, how can we avoid getting fired? You talk about value, and that's a big component. If you're a wholesaler or financial advisor, the last thing you want to do is get fired during a good market.
Fired from your job or fired by your client?
Yeah, one and the same, actually.
Here's the deal. If you are bringing an inordinate amount of value to the relationship, it's really hard to fire somebody who brings more value than they cost. If somebody is absolutely cost-focused and all they want is the cheapest deal, I don't even want to win based on that, ever. And that makes you a commodity, and that doesn't make any sense when you're really offering professional services to be treated as a commodity or thought of as a commodity. The way you avoid that is to always focus, again, on the value you bring and remind the customer of your value in a less than arrogant way.
Yeah, and then do you have any your favorite techniques to do that? I mean, is it obvious, or is there something that you've seen or that maybe impacts you that's a way to kind of establish or remind them of of the value that you bring?
Well, what I see in financial services, you just don't hear from anyone very often until things are really good or things really suck. And you get the warning, or you get the, really, you don't even get the attaboy, you're doing great as often as you should. You only get a warning when things are about to go in the toilet. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
The way it works with most of the people I've done business with since I was an adult. So I think staying in front of people, being there in front of mind when it comes to money. When I think of my money, I should think of the person who does my wealth management or my financial service advising or anything around my money. I should think of your name at the same time I think of my money. How do you do that? You got to stay in front of them. You got to add value. You got to be a tangible resource for them. You have to be an emotional resource for them. People buy emotionally and justify logically. We realize that money is a very emotional thing, and how people feel and how you make them feel is very important, just as important as the logical side to most folks. So you have to be front of mind. When somebody thinks of money, they think of you. When somebody thinks of responsibility, they think of me. When somebody thinks of a guy that's going to shoot them straight, I want them to think of me. So pick out what your product and service is that adds the most value, and how do you stay front of mind with your clients?
Yeah, and that leads to creativity. Like, you be creative on how you stay in front of them. But creativity can be a negative as well, right? If you're too creative.
If creativity becomes weird, trendy, faddish, strange, makes them go, huh? Instead of going, oh, there's a big difference between a huh and an oh. So yeah, it can bite you in the butt. We see a lot of people right now who get off on being sort of this strange, weird, kind of fatty, trendy thing. Don't do that. When it comes to money, when it comes to what makes sense, what you and I talk about, your topic and my topic, is hardcore stuff that makes sense. Does it make sense? That's what really people want to rely on long term, which is the kind of relationship we want.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Now, there are some, there's some value in being creative, and you call it growing a pair, and taking a risk that's out there. Is that the art of being successful in business, is knowing how far to go and being able to measure it correctly before you make it?
It is an art, and let your clients guide that. Clients will tell you what it takes to do business with them if we ask them and listen to them. And so we need to do a whole lot more asking and listening. The problem with most people in selling of any type, whether you're selling an idea or selling a car or selling financial services, is that we go in with a solution and enforce the solution down the people's throats. And the problem is we never focus on what they're dealing with. I don't believe the sale, and I spent a lot of years truly as just a sales trainer when I first started in this industry, and that's sort of my background. I'm working on a new sales book now, is that the sale is not made in the solution. The sale is made in your understanding of the problem. And the better you understand the problem, the more you will connect with the person. And that's what they're really looking for, a connection based on your understanding of what they're going through.
That takes growing a pair, because you're not going to be able to help everyone. And for you to be able to recognize and admit that requires some maturity, right? I mean, you can't just keep plugging your product into every potential financial advisor's face and be successful.
The best thing you can do is realize you're not right for everybody. It certainly worked in my career. When I realized that when I took this approach, looked like I started saying what I was going to say, I wasn't going to be right for probably a good 80% of the people out there hiring speakers. I just wasn't going to be right for them. But that other 20%, I was really right for. And so I was able to make damn good living out there selling to people that I was really right for. And I played to, we hear it a lot in politics, you play to your base. Who do you have the best solution for? There's enough market out there, if you just sold to those people, that you would make plenty of money. Now, again, I don't care what it is you do for a living. If you sell to your base, which means these are the people who can most use what I do, and those are the people I'm going to focus on, and I'm going to learn very quickly, early in the relationship, to say, no, you're not right for me, and let me do you a favor. This person over here would be perfect for you. and start saying no. We will always do better when we realize what we should say no to and stop trying to be all things to all people.
You know, Larry, I actually call myself Awesome Mike instead of Awe Everyone Mike, because I'm not trying to awe everybody, just some of them. So
There you go.
You know, what happens if you get a bad person on your team, or you get a poor employee? You know, can you fix them or should you fire them?
You know, I have a good friend who wrote a book called How You Do Anything is How You Do Everything. So if they're coming in late to work, I doubt you're going to fix that. That means they're probably showing up late to their appointments. They're late on their assignments. That shows being late. The core value issue involved there is a lack of respect. If they don't respect me, the money I pay them, or their coworkers, or their customers, I don't want somebody who has a lack of respect to be employed by me. Can that be fixed? It's hard to change a core value. So what I would do, I'm a big fight them from the outside, do it legally, do what makes sense. But if they're going to argue with you, let them argue while I'm not paying them. So I think some people can be fixed. The problem with most people who own a business and manage people or lead people, you got to realize about 20% of the people that work for you are going to be terrific. If you never showed up again, they would still be good. In fact, they're going to be great. That's who they are because that's their value system. 20% of the people are going to suck at it, regardless of what you do. No matter how much time and energy you spend on them, they're not going to be any good. People who are bad employees not because they lack skills. They are bad employees because they've made the decision not to be good. They have the skill. If you hired someone who doesn't have the skill and then you've trained them, communicated what you expect, and they don't do it, it's not because they can, it's because they won't. I don't want anyone working for me who doesn't want to be good at what they do. So you got 20 who are always going to be great. You've always got 20% who are never going to be any good. You're left with the 60 in the middle, and the 60 in the middle is where you need to spend your time and energy just to figure out whether they're going to be moved up to the top 20 or whether they're going to be moved down to the bottom 20. And believe me, if you went in today and fired the bottom 20%, there would be plenty of people there to take their place tomorrow.
Yeah, it's I appreciate your words, and it actually stays right in line with your reputation. You know, it's right up front, in your face. One of my favorite works that you've done is it's called Work for a Reason.
Yeah.
How'd you come up with that concept? I mean, it sounds pretty basic and simple, but work's kind of a bad word in America nowadays.
Yeah, it's a shame. I don't even understand that. We should all be rewarded for work. I don't think we ought to pay you for not working. There's an expectation that we deserve. I don't believe anybody deserves anything that they don't go out there and earn. And it is a societal thing, and it's getting more and more and more that way. So I believe it's called work for a reason. I think you got to break a sweat, either mentally or physically, and hopefully both, at what you do in providing value to the people that you want to serve the most. I really think it comes down to work ethic, which means you show up on time. And all those things go back to a core value. And when your values are correct, then your actions show up as a result of your core values. And work is just a natural way to earn money, in my opinion. And if you're not earning enough money, it's because you're not working hard enough. You're not working smart enough. It's really pretty simple. We've complicated all of it, and we didn't need to.
Yeah, it's simple. It's definitely not easy. Hey, as we're wrapping up here, heading for home plate round and third, if you would. You mentioned a few different lessons you've learned, and I want to ask you maybe your favorite ones. You mentioned that you have lessons from your dad. What are the biggest lessons that you learned from your father?
My dad taught me that telling the truth was the most important thing in life. He really did. Honesty was his number one core value. As a result of that, I never got to lie to my dad. I could do anything in the world, but if I lied to him, there was hell to pay. And, that carries across in my life. It's one of the core values that I have. I think everybody should establish their core values and what they believe in and what they're not willing to compromise on. My book, Grow Up Here, is about that. And the new book, What's Wrong with Damn Near Everything, is about the collapse of core values in society and how that shows up in education and government and our families and so forth. So pick out what that means the most to you, no matter what. To me, you never get to lie to me. I was never allowed to lie to my dad. I can deal with anything you do as long as you own it, take responsibility for it, apologize for it, ask what we can do to fix it. But if you lie to me, it's hard to rebuild trust. So that's one of the things that I learned. And I believe that's what our customers want from us. That's what our coworkers want from us, our employees, our employers. That's all our family wants from us, is for everybody to do what they said they would do, when they said they would do it, the way they said they would do it. That is about a core value of respect and honesty. That's what we need to get back to.
Yeah. Now you mentioned two things. One is about lying. The other one is about actually accountability. And I think they go hand in hand. And I applaud your sharing that with us.
The reason people lie is because there's no accountability for not lying.
Yeah. And even if you fail, if I said I was going to do something and I failed, it's much better if I own it and reboot, as opposed to trying to make excuses and be the wet fish that nobody can get a hold of.
We need to let people feel the consequences of their actions and their words and their emotions. And when we remove consequences, well, actions and words and emotions run amok. Consequences drive behavior. There has to be a downside for dishonesty. There has to be a downside for a lack of respect. If we never feel the downside, then we never change the behavior.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think about the sales manager that gets up and says, hey, our product, it's horrible and it's not our fault. You know, our job is to raise the money, and it's the person that's managing the money. It's their job. So it's not our fault, whatever. So our new marketing strategy is going to be to find customers that have never heard of us before.
You know, it's hard to believe that goes on, isn't it? It really is hard to believe. You got to find somebody who doesn't know how much we suck so we can sucker them into doing business with us. So down the line, they'll discover how bad our products and services are. But it doesn't matter. We're always filling the funnel at the top, because the minute somebody does business with us, we'll never have a repeat. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking a hard pause there, because that's actually a real thing. And I think that you're championing the effort to extinguish that kind of fire that are out there.
You know, it comes down to just do the right thing. We've got so many people are working too hard at figuring out how to beat what the right thing is. We're trying to figure out how to beat hard work. We're trying to figure out how to beat honesty. Everybody's triggered by something, and we become so politically correct we don't make sense anymore. We just need to get back to a handful of basics. Is this the right thing to do? Do people win as a result of doing business with us? Do we provide value to the situation and the exchange of money and time and energy? Are we honest at the end of the day? The number one thing for me is that, and we can wrap it up here if you want to, I go in, the last thing I do at the end of every day is I brush my teeth. And I'm standing in the mirror in my bathroom before I go get in bed, and I brush my teeth and I look at myself, and just this quick in my mind, I say, was I the best version of Larry Winget I can be today? Now, I know what that means. Did I treat folks right? Was I kind? Was I honest? And somehow we think that because I'm very direct and have no time for BS and so forth, that's unkind. It's not true at all. Was I kind? Was I honest? Was I a good guy? Was I fair in all that I did? Did I bring value to the situation? And if I can say, yeah, you did okay today, Larry, I can go to bed and sleep pretty good. And it's because we don't have that level of self-awareness around core values and bringing the best to any situation that I think we're in trouble today. If every single person did just that, we would all be a whole lot better off.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. And definitely look forward to your next book coming out, and then one after that, and the one after that. Been a huge fan. You know, if people want to reach out to you, they can go to LarryWinget.com, I believe is your website there. And
LarryWinget.com. I'm easy to find. Larry Winget fan page on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm all over YouTube with lots of videos and stuff. It's hard to miss me. Go in a bookstore.
Yeah, exactly. Appreciate that. You know, if I could ask you, I have a couple of signature questions. I'll just do the one here. Larry, if your phone rang and you picked it up, and on the other end of the line was 30-year-old Larry Winget.
Yeah.
You only had a couple of seconds. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Be you faster. We spend most of our time trying to live our lives to make other people happy. You know what? They're not going to be. And the sooner you step back and stop worrying about that, the happier you will be. Ultimately, I'm a very selfish person. At the end of the day, if I can say all those things that I told you I asked myself and be happy with myself, there's a higher likelihood that others will be happy with me. But if I'm so externally focused on making all of them happy, then I'm not able to answer those questions in a very good way. So be you faster and make sure the you want to be is based on the right values.
Larry, appreciate your work. Appreciate you coming on the show today. I'm sure I can speak for everyone that you've touched and say thank you on their behalf. We all wish you great success and fortune. As we say on the Awesome Wholesaler Experience podcast, Larry, it's about the journey. We wish you well on yours. Hope to see you again soon. A huge thanks for everyone for tuning in today. And if you haven't already done so,